What if we involved our public in helping us decide?
What do you
Honest
mean?
Conversations podcast. There's a podcast called
Is there?
Honest Conversations. Damn it!
Geez, all the good
Uh,
ideas, eh? All the good
it's
ideas.
a faith podcast, though. Okay, well, we'll think. I'm just, my mind is like, I directed my mind to find a good, because I really like what you have, Soul to Souls too, but then it's going to be very spirit, it's going to give that very spiritual.
It's got a
Are we
bit.
live?
Yes,
Rick,
well,
I just saw,
I said 5 seconds.
I thought you were going to say go or something.
Well, okay. So, well,
I'm sitting here Googling while you're live.
excuse me, are you Googling?
I was Googling. Guilty.
Oh, no. Hey, you know what? I mean, it's hard to interrupt an idea, a flow of an idea, right? A flow of thought to go.
Yeah.
But
I know you did warn me a couple of times, and I kept going down my train of thought. It's my own
and if
fault.
people are curious and watching, either live or in the recording, we are talking about a possible, let's just say possible, because we don't know really for sure, but we're both sort of leaning towards a new rebranding of our Wednesday Wellness show. And Fati was throwing out some ideas, and one of them that she came up with was this honest conversation. That was honest conversation, right?
Honest Conversations, but there was a podcast already called that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I mean, but you know
it would
what?
have been a great name.
It would have been a great name, and maybe somebody else has got an idea for us. Who knows? We're willing to look at anything, and of course, all
Hmm.
possibility. So, I mean, one of the things that have always been on our back burner is turning this into a podcast. Taking our episodes and having it in a different format for other people to to listen. Because right now, it's kind of awkward to kind of put earphones on and just go out for a walk. It's not that easy, but if it was in a podcast format, it could be, right. So, I mean, there's lots of different things to explore for sure.
I mean, you could probably access it from Facebook and with your
Well, you
headphones
can.
on.
It's just I'm not sure I know with some of the platforms, like if you access it through YouTube, when you close your say you're using your
Yeah,
phone, when you
yeah,
close
it
your
kicks you
phone,
out.
it
Yeah,
kicks you out unless you
yeah.
buy the subscription, right? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I'm not 100% sure on the. I think Facebook still goes on in the background, but I'm not 100% sure. But oh well,
I think Facebook is the same actually.
is it?
I think once you click out of it,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think so. Yeah, could
So
be wrong.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's worth experimenting, but yeah. So we're kind of toying with that. Like it's not that it's all part of our topic, really, when you think about it a little bit. Transitions and what it
Hmm.
entails. Uh, but I now we talked about this actually a couple of weeks ago. I'm just going to throw the title up, but the and I kind of added this tagline about understanding change because for me that also means change, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but when you first came up with the idea, what were your ideas around? Like, what were you pointing to when you were talking about transition specifically, or was there anything?
Well, I think life transitions. I mean, I work with. I think as coaches, we work often with people that are in transition
Yes.
somehow, right?
Yeah.
Either it's like in their career or in their lives. Like I work with a lot of moms who are transitioning from being just themselves to becoming mothers, and then there's another transition when they decide to go back into the world of, into the workforce again, whether it is by starting their own business or going back to a corporate job. It's another transition now with a very different set of circumstances, right? Once you have become a mother. So I think transitions are all those disrupting circumstances that change what we are comfortable in, right? They put you in a, they take you out of your comfort
Mm-hmm.
and create somewhat of a discomfort for a while, right? Because when change happens, there's an adjustment that needs to happen. And transitions are often very difficult for people to navigate unless, there's massive clarity or intention behind it, or a very well-defined plan and an understanding that it's just a temporary phase. People can get really stuck in those transitions, in lack of, feeling confused, the lack of clarity, and just wrestling even with who they are, right?
Totally.
Because it kind of makes you question everything about yourself, everything that you identified with, so it can translate into a loss of identity, or like confusion around who you are and what you want. I mean, really anything, can happen in life that can disrupt that, whether it is a transition, like a beautiful transition, like having children, becoming a parent, or it can be a transition like losing someone in your life, or changing your career completely, or things in the world change, like coronavirus happened. We all transitioned into being indoors and changing the way we always did things.
It's a word that just popped into my head while you were speaking was um, interruptions
Yeah, yeah. Or disruption.
or disruption. Um,
Yeah.
uh, because it's reflecting a little bit on some of the things that have happened in my life. You have like pretty well all the same. Like you graduate. You get into the work life. You meet somebody, you get married, then you have kids, and the kids grow up. The kids graduate. You're empty nesters. Some kids come back. Kind of a thing. And then you're empty nesters again. But there's life in itself is in constant change.
In constant change,
It's in
yes.
constant change. And what I've noticed with myself, and it's like and having a career and then not having a career, it's going from these, and we talked a little bit about it just before we got on, and then we got distracted with Google, but but this, we get sort of, all of a sudden we just get comfortable with the known, like we're getting
Mhm.
comfortable with our new role, and then an interruption, something
Mhm.
something remarkably changes, because in essence we're always changing, we just don't notice it, right? And I mean, one of the obvious ones is if you haven't seen somebody for such a long time, and then all of a sudden you see them again, you go, oh, you've changed. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just read my mind. It
of
is
course.
not about it is not about just change. Change is constantly happening in our lives. It's a greater degree of change. Like more sudden, that affects many different areas of your life, perhaps, or it's a little more disruptive than like you're right. Life is constantly changing. Like every moment is gone the moment after, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
change is part of life. It's just transitions are like almost like letting go of certain things too, right? Require us to just really let go of old ways of thinking, of being, of doing, behaving, identifying. Sometimes they're chosen, sometimes they're not. So
Well,
yeah.
no, I was just going to say, I like your point, because as part of the strategy, right? I for the graphics for this show, I put a cocoon and a butterfly,
Mhm.
which is a very dramatic transition that's happened. Here's the caterpillar going merrily along in his life as if nothing's happening, eating leaves and doing whatever
Mhm.
caterpillars do, and then something happens. Now, this is, no metaphor is perfect, but something obviously happens where he or she needs to transition, And part of that transition is giving up the fact that they're a caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think from my point of view and my experience for myself with myself is the trouble I got myself into. And so the struggle, I'll say the struggle of the transition was not willing to let go of certain ideals or certain things that I was hanging on to, thinking that they would serve me just as well in the future as they would have in the past. And yet the transition, and not recognizing how big of a transition I needed to do or how big of a change was actually occurring in front of me. And one of the biggest ones for me was having a career and having no career.
Mm. Like you made like more of a corporate career
Well, yeah,
into just being your own boss.
yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah. It's a big change.
yeah.
As you were talking, I got a little distracted trying to think if I could repeat what I said to you last week in this metaphor of the butterfly and motherhood, right? Do you remember when we mentioned the butterfly, the caterpillar turning into the butterfly? I was like, yeah, that is a little bit like motherhood, right? You turn
Mhm.
into this butterfly, and motherhood is a little bit like you have these two things that now belong to you, and you don't quite know what to do with them,
Yeah.
and you don't quite get a good look at it for a long time, right? Until all of a sudden you realize how beautiful these wings are and how they expand you,
Mm.
right? But it takes some time to catch on to that because of this really massive transition that we go through. That's the way I at least experienced it. Like I turned into a mother, and I was so like busy kind of feeling my body again and like understanding where I was at and what I was doing with this being. It was
Yeah.
my child that I was responsible for, that I didn't really truly get a chance, an opportunity to take a good look at it and appreciate it and really see it for what it was for a while.
Hmm.
Mommy brain, the overwhelm of, just becoming a parent. Those are real things that we, as moms, and I'm sure you can speak to how fatherhood feels like. We go through it. No one prepares you for that. No one really can predict how you personally are going to feel about it. But we go through it very much, and sometimes it takes some time for you to, at least where I was in my
Hmm.
level of evolution as a human being, I was so like just consumed by trying to gain control again, figure this thing out, that I thought I had it all figured out,
Yeah.
with, I have all my supplies, I have the crib, I have the decorations in place, I have my brick looking what to expect book that I never opened. Uh, and I thought I could just like, I'm just gonna figure it out. And very much of it is just figure it out. But the just figure it out is also overwhelming sometimes, right? And it kind of takes away from um, experiencing it fully in the present. So yeah, it very much felt like, you have turned into a butterfly. You feel very much like a caterpillar still, with some extra stuff that you don't know what to do with. And you don't realize how beautiful the extra stuff that you have is until you get an opportunity to take a good look at yourself, which sometimes may take a little while. It's just like those showers that you don't get an opportunity to take for a while. Or sleep.
Or yeah, like there's a sense of you're never alone, right?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you're never alone for a long time. When you have a baby, you're never alone for a long time. For me, it was 8 months, and then I decided to accept some help,
Mm-hmm.
accept the fact that just doing it all on my own was just adding a lot of stress. But yeah, you go from being, in full control of your time, and to it doesn't really belong to you fully anymore. It's a big, big transition.
And then there's the other transition, and I'm going to use work for this one because I mean it's very similar to what me and my wife have experienced when the kids left. And just to give everybody a I was sharing this with my daughter today that as parents, we never really stop kind of worrying. Like we're always parents. Like they're just, even though we don't have no kids at home or anything like that, it seems like, we're always doing parenting things, right? It's all part of the
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, and but what the one transition that was the most sort of, I'll say, interesting was to have a scheduled career where I knew I was doing something every day, Monday to Friday, and then suddenly, because I was laid off, suddenly, um, the next day I was not employed,
Hmm.
and there's that sense of, oh, like, okay, so what next? Like before, it was sort of like, it's like, oh, we're going to have a child, and you have this anticipation. The child comes, and you go, oh, okay, kind of, and you kind of roll into it a little bit. But yes, there's identities that need to be sort of let go of, so the transition is a little bit easier. But the sudden ones, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's other ways of suddenly having that happen to people in life where things are disrupted for whatever reason. Um, and you're left with a really kind of a void of, like, there's half fear and half excitement,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's sort of like, okay, I'm not sure what's going to be next, but I can pretty well do anything I want, kind of a thing. Like, it's like, okay, so now what? Do I just, maybe I'll just ride it for a while or do whatever, right? But there's a sense of, I guess, loss in as part of a natural progression of transition.
But it is it's not just the sense of loss, it is a loss, right?
Well, you're
And
right.
yes,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
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 yeah, it's a loss of your identity, it's a loss of structure, right? The structure that you get from going to work, and I'm going to be there this time every day. These are the jobs that I'm going to do every day from this time to this time, to right. Things are very like structured when you go into
yeah,
work,
yeah,
like a work environment.
yeah,
And so I think that, and that's very much how I coach moms who were in a corporate job before, and then they let it go. They were just full-time moms for a while. Somehow we don't really connect the dots to that structure, what keeps us organized, and that's how we get things done, even in our lives. It applies to our everyday lives too, with our
yeah,
children, right?
yes,
And so I find that often, like for instance, in my case, I didn't actually miss my job because I didn't actually love my job,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
What I missed was the structure that the job gave me, right?
Interesting.
The being able to predict my days and know that it was going to start at this time. Well, I wasn't very sure what time it was going to end every
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
It was open ended a little bit. But,
And
like knowing, like, around this time I take lunch break, that was kind of questionable too in my case. Okay, let's not talk about me. But, like there is some structure to work life and going into a, office or, job when you have a job.
yeah,
And so, part of that loss you can do something about, actually, right?
mm,
When you start thinking about your own life in terms of what I need to give my own personal life structure,
yeah,
not just in terms of um, everything, what I do with my kids or what time I do it, their activities, like just really put them on a calendar, right? Like what time I take my lunch breaks. If exercise is important to me, put it on your calendar and like book it. So in some sense, that part of the loss can be replaced by you managing your time in a more structured way, right?
yeah. And
The,
it doesn't mean, I just want to, because that's exactly what ended up happening for me.
yeah.
Um, Inadvertently, we ended up getting a pet, a dog, and
Okay.
and I kind of call her. Her name's Willow, and I kind of call her my rescue dog in a sense, because there was this void, and
Yeah.
you're absolutely correct. There was some structure and purpose missing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that I don't think we're suggesting that you have to reschedule your life exactly like you had your work life, because in
No,
a
no.
lot of ways, some of it was not healthy. But this did provide me with a sense of purpose, and there was some structure, because every day, and I've been doing this for the last 6 years, because I've been in this away from it for about 6 years now. But every day I've gotten up and I'm out by 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, depending on the time changes. Um, uh, I got some like, and then the rest of the day just seems to fold much easier. Just that little bit of structure.
Yeah, I mean, we're habitual beings. Let's just be honest with our own nature. The brain likes routine. The brain likes structure, because then it doesn't have to figure it out every minute of the day. What am I
True.
going to do next?
True.
What am I going to do in the next hour? Right? That takes up a lot of mental effort to do
Yeah.
every day, right? And
Yeah.
also, I'm not suggesting that that's going to fix it, right? Because I think what is difficult about transitions, especially what you're speaking to, is that identity loss, right? Like identifying with your role, in your job and what you were doing, and all of the sudden that's gone, right? So it's not just about structure. It's a lot more complex than that. It is about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I'm also not. I don't want people to go out and get dogs either as the solution either. What worked for me, right? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
and from a coaching perspective, it's got to work for you, right? But yeah, I mean, there was a sense of identity, and but part of transitioning is understanding your own innate creative force, in the sense of recreating an identity, if you want,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
And you know what? Like, yeah, I also heard you say I felt like I had no purpose, right? And I
Yeah.
think that it makes a lot of sense why that is and why it feels that way. And a way to counter that is to just really sit down and think, just clarify to yourself, well, at this point of my life, what do I really want, right? Because often, like, we feel lost and unclear because we haven't given it the time, we haven't put enough time into thinking about, what do I want today? 3 years ago, that was my goal. Is this still my goal today, right? Does that still fit and align with me? Is this still something that excites me and motivates me? What is my purpose,
Mm.
right? And I think that that's a reason why working with a life coach during a life transition is so powerful, because that's the kind of work that we do. We help people really kind of regroup with themselves and think about, what do I do? What do you want? What would like move you? Can you think big? Where do you want to be in an ideal life, right?
That is the toughest, that is tough question for a lot of people, is to,
Mm-hmm.
because at the surface, this is what I look like I want,
Mm-hmm.
but at the deeper level, it's really not. It's, but I think it's easier to see that when there's a bit of a loss piece, and I'll call it loss, where there's something missing going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious though, because from your perspective on when kids come into your life. So there's an addition. You know what I'm getting at, right? There's so
I
so
know you're getting it.
so
Yeah.
so when we speak about mission, it's almost like, well, your mission is now you're supposed to be a mother, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that sort of pops into your head, but but there's still that peak that helps with the transition. I don't know. Can you speak a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think I think parenthood is probably different than anything else, right? Because it just completely shifts even your values on what matters. You're no longer just having a vision just for yourself, right?
It's not
And
about
like you
you
said,
anymore.
there's an addition right now. So you could have everything super clear, and then this human being comes into your life, and now they completely depend on you, and everything that you do or think has to include them one way or another, right?
Well,
I'm not saying go out and have drinks with your friends with your newborn. I mean, you could do that. But I'm just saying, like long term, what's my purpose? Like what do I want to do with my life? They're going to be included in that because that them being in your life is going to put some conditions onto what you can do, right? Some limitations, time wise of what you can do with a little child, right? Until they grow older. So yeah, it's a massive transition for everyone because it just shifts everything in your life. You're no longer one, now you're two, possibly three. I mean, some people have six at a time. that would be really difficult. Um, but so yeah, now you're adding on to, and you're have to completely change the way you think of everything, life, yourself, your priorities, your goals, right?
so
So it's different.
and this is where I'm a little curious, like, because I mean my kids are adult kids now, and they've gone through this. They've all gotten children and stuff like that, and of course I've gone it from a father's perspective. And I want to say, uh, I think it's a little bit easier, I think, for the fathers, in the sense of I still had my identity with work, and
Mm-hmm.
um, but when your wife has a career, and all of a sudden, there appears to be, and I could be totally wrong about it, a tension now between the balance between motherhood and career.
100%. Yeah. Even when you make a choice, even when you make a choice, which I made to just
Yeah,
stop working because I
yeah.
wanted to spend time with my children, there's a whole set of perceptions that you have to deal with, your own judgment of yourself. There's a sense of everything that I've done until now was for nothing. Like you feel like you're missing out. You feel like you're not living a normal life anymore. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time with a baby that doesn't talk or interact with you in the way that an adult does. So there were days I was like, oh my God, I love you, but how many more diapers can I change without, like going crazy, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes, even when you make the choice feeling really good about it, there are moments that you're like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? Because anyone that has been through motherhood will tell you it's the hardest job you'll ever have. It is much easier to go back to work. And as I say that, I say it cautiously because I have a lot of friends that went back to work. That also is a very difficult decision. That also feels conflicting
Oh,
because now
totally.
you're split. Your time is split between your children, your child, and work. And when you're at work, you're not with your child, right? So
Yeah.
that doesn't even feel fully right. So
No.
there's perceptions around that too. There's your own judgment around it too. There's your own feelings around it. There's the sense of missing out in there too. It almost is like you can't get it right no matter what decision you make.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
And yet, and, and it's unfortunate that turns out that way, because a lot of it is
yeah.
cultural, right? It's like, depending on how you're brought up,
Cultural,
you know,
social, cultural.
social,
Yeah,
cultural, right?
yeah.
It's like, the pressures of keeping a career, kind of a thing. Oh, you're going to give up your whole career, kind of a thing. There's all sorts of that, and nothing. And I'm not saying anything's right or wrong about any decision that anybody really wants to make, but it's that angst and conflict that kind of, for me, is the sticky point in transitions. So, like,
Hmm.
transitions are inevitable. Like, like and part of having it sort of go smoothly is recognizing where the difficulties are happening, where the rubs are happening, where the
Hmm.
struggle appears to be happening, and,
Hmm.
then getting more to the source of, and really it's asking that same question, right? Regardless if it's a dual, I want to keep my career, I want the balance, work-life balance is, what do you really want?
Yeah. What do you really want? And I would say, really, really, really let go of any perception, any social conditioning. I know it's often not easy to realize, self-realize that you're conditioned by certain beliefs, social beliefs, right? The sense that a mom, a stay-at-home mom, is lazy. I mean, I think every mom that has made that decision has felt that way,
Yeah,
especially in New York City. Oh yeah, you just took the easy way out. And it's like, yeah, you want to come and change some diapers for a whole day? Do I punch you on the right or do I punch you on the left? Right? And it's like there's nothing easy about motherhood, but because of the way society looks down on women to make that decision, because society does not put value, at least the one I live in, does not put value on motherhood and making a decision to be with your children in these like crucial first years. There is zero value being put on that. Even when you go through a divorce, which I am, it's
yeah,
like zero monetary value, right? In a society that everything is run by how much it costs and how much it's worth, motherhood is worth nothing.
yeah,
What did you do? Are you gainfully employed? That's all that matters. And it's a shame. It really is a shame. And it's something that I know there's a lot of activism around this because it's a real social problem. The
yeah.
motherhood is not being seen as the really hardcore job that it is. And there's
Oh,
no shame around it. There is no, like feeling like you took the easy way out because any mom who went back to work, decided to stay with their kids later, they went back to work. And I'm like, that was too hard, right? And what makes it hard, it is all the judgment around it, the feeling like you have to be ashamed that you decided to do that, and you must have not been good at what you did. And again, this is my perspective. I live in New York City. It's a highly competitive environment, very driven people. Like career really matters to most people in this town.
yeah.
So that makes it very difficult for a lot of women, and it's a shame. I really went through that for years. It was very, very hard.
And out here, just to give credit to the too, is the way, and this is sort of going off on a bit of a tangent, but so many families now cannot afford to have somebody stay home without some kind of other
Yeah,
income coming
yeah,
in.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, it is all about dual incomes now. In the 50s, there was the stay-at-home mom, right? It's like, oh, you want a career? Like, what's, all this. Now it's kind of flipped around a little bit, but
mhm.
within our own economy, a lot of people don't have that luxury of choice, in that they're, within, I don't know what the maternity leaves are nowadays, but within a short period of time, they have to make a choice.
Shameful here. They're
Yeah,
shameful. That's
yeah,
all I have to say. Like your baby's barely out of the womb. You have to go
yeah,
back to work.
yeah.
It's really
And
shameful.
it's a little bit
Yeah,
like this here too, and you
yeah.
don't get your full wage, and you don't all this. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of what has felt like I have no choice but to, right,
Yeah.
which also slows down the transition, right? Because as long as
Hmm.
you're kept in struggle, you'll never really truly come out of the cocoon. You're always
You
in this.
just hit it in the head. Exactly. Because
Boom.
why are we talking about all this is the fact that it's not just that the transition is difficult, it's what surrounds the transition. Like
Ooh,
the social conditioning, the environment, how supportive the environment is. What are your own expectations? Because whether we like it or not, we have our own conditioning that we
oh yeah,
inflict to our own selves,
yeah,
right? So all of the conditioning and the perceptions and the environment and the society and the laws, all of that doesn't really help often with transitions, right? And like, especially if you're not feeling well or you're feeling a little bit depressed, there's perceptions around that too, right? If you go to a therapist, there's perceptions around that as well, right? So yeah, transitions are really difficult in on themselves, but what you're saying is very true. Like you can't really use any energy you can't really dedicate yourself like fully to going through this transition smoothly if you're dealing with all this other stuff that surrounds it. It does make it a lot more difficult to navigate and to overcome.
And and kind of flip a little bit back to in my example, and we should be doing a parenting show too. I think that'd
We
be
should, yeah, we
fun.
should.
And but when I the lost one, like having a career and then all of a sudden finding all this free time, there's a lot of perceptions around that too. I didn't think about that, in the sense, I had people coming up to me saying, "Oh, you're so lucky. It's great having all this free time." Um,
Mm-hmm.
and all this kind of, like, I should be rejoicing. And
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot of rejoice, at least not in the beginning. It was sort of like I felt like I felt lost. I truly felt like I had no direction all of a sudden, even though I had various other things. I had my coaching certificate at that time, and I had lots of opportunity, but it still felt like there was no clear breadcrumb in front of me that I could grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
But life certainly did give me lots of other things to deal with, which in hindsight, I'm grateful for the fact that I didn't have to worry about going to work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, and I've shared this before. My parents got ill, so there was an opportunity to spend some time with that. My mom got really ill, so there was a lot of time I got to spend with her. I ended up with cancer, so I had to deal with some of parts of that. So there was like and this is the part of transition that I guess you can only really appreciate in reflection, because when you're in the thick of it, it doesn't feel that way.
You don't see it. You don't see the
It,
gift that's in it, right?
you don't see the blessings at the end. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Because again, we have no idea what the future really, and maybe this is all part of it. Yes, this cocoon feels like shit right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you coming out looking like that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a thing.
But like I think the gist of what's coming out of this conversation for me is that as crappy as that feels, as difficult as that is, like like a loss of identity is not a everyday thing that you go through or something that you overcome in a day or two. It really takes a lot of regrouping and working out, like intentionally working on yourself and figuring out. But what is coming out from this is how crucial the environment around us is. And in any transition, if that environment was supportive, we
Mm.
would actually have the time to do the work that is required to get through it. And the cocoon would not feel as sticky and as oppressing or, like difficult to navigate. If we had a support system that worked for us instead of judging us, instead of all these other things that we just discussed, right? Which again, and it's not just to like, I'm not just making a pitch for coaching, but like that's why it is so beneficial to have someone that walks along that path with you, because you feel supported
Well,
navigating something that is difficult to navigate on your own, because there's all these environmental like elements that are kind of working against you
yeah.
often.
And that was one of the things that I know I have. I'm not sure if I shared it in any of our episodes, but I've shared some of the highlights about the loss of the job and all the other stuff after that came after it. I did have a secret weapon.
Okay.
Okay, so when they did release me from work and let me go, like in the layoff, part of the deal was they gave me a coach.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
They gave me an opportunity to get some coaching and counseling, kind of a thing,
Okay.
and I took advantage of it. Like I said yes. I said, you're going to give me this, because there was two things. One, I was interested in that field,
Mm-hmm.
right? I wanted to get more involved in it, and I was able to talk to this coach about it, and he gave me some really clear good ideas of what to do next.
Mhm.
which I would never have. I they were brilliant at the in the time because they really helped me solidify the direction I wanted to go. Right. Because you basically said, well, if you're interested in coaching, go out and interview coaches. Go out and find, a dozen different coaches from all over wherever, and set up times with them and go interview them about what it's like to be a coach. Oh, never thought. Well, sure, why not? So, but you know what? He was also there when I went through cancer. He was there when my folks were sick. He was there when I couldn't figure out what to do. My timetables. I was overwhelmed. So it was a little bit like a secret weapon, kind of a thing. And yeah, it was only once a week, but that once a week, there was so much packed in that 1 hour that just put things in perspective, so I could see a lot more clearly what the next week was gonna,
I mean, I think this is bringing up such an important point, right? You could spend 1 hour talking to the right person that can help guide you,
mm-hmm.
help you bring the best out in yourself. You get clarity, right? And like come out clear and like with a plan and like, feel like it was truly supported. And then you could spend a whole week trying to get the same thing from your friend, from your mom, from so and so from work, and none of those people, not for nothing, there's nothing against doing that, but they
No,
may not be qualified to give you that kind of support. And that's a mistake that we often make. We tend to just go to the people in our lives for support, for, like, well, what do you think I should do? Like, can you give me advice on this? Right. And,
yeah,
and I love all my people. They're all good at something. They're all excellent at something, but they
yeah.
can't all, like cater to my needs in the way that someone who does this for a living can. Right. So
Can't
that
be
one
objective.
hour can,
Yeah,
huh?
they can't be objective. Like they can't. They because
They
they are
can be
so.
objective.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're also not experts in this, right? Let's just call ourselves what we are. We're experts in this, right? So it's like, I have a tooth pain and I'm going to go and see a dermatologist, like, it's not very helpful, right? Or like, my tooth hurts and I'm going to go talk to my friend Molly. It's like, what is she going to do? It's a little bit like that when you're going through a life transition, like, let's say even you just lost your job, or speaking to someone who knows what they're talking about, who can really like point you in the right direction, can really help you tap into your own wisdom, knowledge, resources, is very different than going to your friend who has all these perceptions of you, his own ideas of what is, like, work hard, work. This is how I climb the ladder. It's like everyone's gonna have their own idea of what is, like, ultimately what they want in their lives, right? And it's not necessarily going to be what you want.
No,
So yeah, go and talk to someone who can actually help you. And there's nothing wrong with talking to your husband or to your wife or to, to your friends. They may be able to advise you on several things, but if they don't do this for a living, it's just another opinion,
and
right?
that's a couple of things on about that though is what I appreciated was is that not only did it give me clarity, but it also gave me um, the strength to look within for what was working for me, right? Because there's so many self-help books out there, and there's so many nice, good people with good intentions, that will say, like, well, this, you should try this. This is because it worked for them. But we're all living separate lives. We're all living different. We're seeing the world differently. We're experiencing it differently. So solutions have to be based on your experiences and what's real for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, and that's why I kept saying, like asking you, like being curious, because there's no way. I mean, sure, my wife's here. but her experience of motherhood is different than your
Of
experience of motherhood,
course. Yeah.
right?
And and I'm gonna say this again, environment, environment, environment. The environment makes a very big difference, right? The working mom in a big city is not the working mom in the suburbs, right? Like your environment, what is your financial situation? What does your husband do? Like what are your circumstances, right? Which is going back to your point of self-help books are great. I think they're great because they start a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're motivated enough, you can go really far. I think I have gone really far, but I certainly needed aid and help along the way. And I would not be here if I didn't have coaches helping me along the way, push me past those growth pains, those blocks. When I hit blocks where on my own I would have reverted. On my own I would have been stuck there.
Yep.
On
Yep.
my own, I would have been in my own rabbit hole.
Yep.
I would have moved on to the next self-help book, to the next self-development program, to the next, quest. Having someone that does this, like just reflects back on you what is actually happening, where you're stuck, what you cannot see is invaluable. Is invaluable. It is not at all like doing it yourself. For one thing, my experience in my own personal life with the people that I love dearly, that are so very stuck, that I've tried to help, they can't even start. They can't even start. You can give them all the resources you want, but until the person has that push, that motivation, that clarity, that purpose super clear, they're just not going to take those steps. Or unless something really, really big happens, right? Like often we have to just be at the very bottom to want to go back up. There's no more going down. Okay, the only way is up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
often people that do make dramatic changes in their lives are people that have been at the very, very bottom.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's unfortunate. Fortunate, and everybody has a different level of bottom, right? Everybody has
Everyone
that,
has a very different
right?
level of bottom. Yeah.
But it really comes down to like all change starts with awareness, right? So wherever that awareness occurs, and it's usually at that point where something has to give, something has to, like you know, um, call it the bottom, where you're aware of this can't continue. Like there's something fundamentally needs to change. Like this is
But it's
much.
the start though, because
Oh yeah,
awareness without action is stagnant,
100%. But
right?
it always
It
starts.
always starts there.
Always starts.
Absolutely. Because if you don't even think you have a problem,
Yeah.
then there's nowhere to go, right?
So couple of things that kind of wrapping up our subject a little bit, like to make for me transition becomes easier when I'm aware of the struggle
Mm-hmm.
and when I'm reminded that it's part of the process too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the world is constantly changing, and for me it's either I am not moving fast enough where I'm moving too fast, right? So there's the balance of either I'm being overwhelmed with everything where I need to slow down, or I'm sort of, I'm not going to say depressed, but it feels pressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like something's
Feels
holding.
heavy.
Yes,
Feels heavy. Yeah.
yes. Where I need to get more involved, get more participation into it. So I mean, so for me, it's a lack of participation where it looks like I'm doing nothing and it's unhealthy versus too much where everything feels overloaded. Like I don't know which way I'm going. Right. I'm really,
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it's understanding, first of all, being aware of which zone I'm in, and then understanding a little bit more about where I need to be, and yeah, and certainly having a coach walk through that is very beneficial. And but and from time to time, I find myself I need a coach, but a lot of times it's becoming, as you grow in this, you start to become more self-aware, and you start to regulate yourself. You could see it in yourself, and that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to regulate and then realize how adaptable you really are.
Well, and in terms of the regulation piece,
Hmm.
the awareness part is one. The way we regulate is by expressing what's in there, right? What's creating the discomfort. And it's important to understand that all transitions in some sense are is grieving some type of loss, right? And with grief, right, or loss, it's really important that you go through feeling it, feeling the grief of
Yeah.
losing that job, or like losing the you that you wear, or like, the identity that you had. Because for as long as you just judge it as like, oh, this is silly, like, why am I feeling
Get
this way? I
over
shouldn't
it.
feel.
Get over it.
Yeah, get over it. It's all gonna work out. Everything happens for a reason, like
Yeah.
boys don't cry, or whatever it is, right? It's important to actually feel it, to feel the grief of, I am grieving this transition, because I have transition means that you're letting go of something, whether you chose to, or it's just happening, because of outer circumstances.
Or
What was and no longer is, right?
and admit you're having a tough time. Like there's nothing wrong with
Of course, of course.
yeah.
Express it and don't judge it. So it's express it, release it, let it just be. And don't judge it. Don't like get all like angry at yourself and feel guilty or shame, or none of those feelings really do anything other than disempower us. Right? Like now I feel guilty and ashamed that I lost my job. And how is that changing your situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not,
No.
right? It's just making you even feel worse about it. So, all of those feelings that we are wired to feel, again, conditioning, are useless, right? We just feel them because that's what we're used to going through, judging ourselves because we were judged, right? And so we do that to ourselves. The moment that you can let go of the judgment, and you can just accept the fact that you're sad, and you know what, it is just what I feel. The feeling is there, it's undeniable, and it's okay. It's hard to go from doing something every single day for so many years to not having that thing anymore,
And
and be
and
okay with it.
and a gentleman that part of his teaching, like his name is Sid Banks, and I was reminded today in another conversation, his quote of, if we can only learn not to be afraid of our experiences, not to be afraid of our feelings, that alone could change the world.
100%. Yes.
And we, the way this person explained it to me, he says it's almost like we have a phobia on our feelings. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do this because I don't want to feel this way, right? I don't want to go on an airplane because I have a fear of flying, right? I don't want to do this because I have a fear of whatever, right? And and yet all it is just telling you you're human, right? Like and when you live that feeling, like acknowledge it for what it is, it's yeah, you're sad. Great, right? There's nothing wrong with you. And if you allow the sadness and you allow the feelings and you allow the experience, like the transition doesn't turn into a struggle at that point. It actually turns into part of the process. It just turns in, it's just part of the deal.
Yeah,
And
and the feelings, once you express them, they're gone. They're
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
Just like humor me and try it. Just experiment for once. Let
yeah,
the feelings come, express, like surge,
yeah,
and then you see what happens. What happens is now they're gone because
yeah,
they had an opportunity to have a say. There's a part of you that needed to express that.
yeah,
And once it's been done and you acknowledge it and you don't shame it and put it down and judge it, there's nothing else to say. It's been said, right?
Yeah.
It's been expressed.
Yeah.
It's just a part of us that needs to be seen.
Yeah.
And everyone loves to be seen. So yeah, it's true. It's just parts of us that are grieving the loss of something that made us feel comfortable. And comfort is safety. And we are creatures that love to be safe, right? Like
Yeah.
safety
Well,
is like
it's part of our
primal.
survival mechanism, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we and sometimes we get mixed up when we get a certain feeling. We think it's a signal for danger,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Well,
And we need to really look at our perceptions. Like we need to, are you really in danger? Like
yeah.
what are you really fearful of, right? So anyways, it's
Yeah,
a
because I think, the other side of transition, what's difficult in transitions, like one is like grieving what has been lost. The
yeah.
other is what we do with everything, projecting what
Mhm.
may not happen. You being stuck in this forever. Like, I will never get a job again. I will never be seen as someone that's successful, or I'll never be able to pay my bills. We're projecting, we're taking, like, a fear that we have and projecting it into the future,
Yep.
even though it hasn't happened yet. So we're very predictable. Can we just all agree to
Well,
this, that once you understand these basic concepts, that you know how human beings, like, work?
yeah. Yeah. We like to think that we can predict the future, but yeah, no, there's
No.
absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way. And for me, the hope message in any transition is, and it sounds really funny in the sense of, you know what, you just don't know. Like if you can get comfortable with the phrase "I don't know," and know that you are more than capable of taking care of anything that comes your way. um yeah, I mean, it's all possible, right? It's all possible. Anything's possible. Like I didn't think that it would be possible to sit in a Zoom room, 4 hours away from, a lady in Brooklyn, kind of thing. you know I I could not have predicted that when I lost my job, that
Yeah,
I would be
we could
here,
have not.
right?
No.
No way, no way. Now, if I had decided that I was going to plan my future, I don't think this would have come up as part of the plan.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And yet, I do strongly believe that we're constantly creating a reality, right?
Sure. Yes.
It's a whole conversation, probably for another talk.
Well, we actually
That
I think we have a guest that might be able to speak to that pretty good.
Right,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
right. Very exciting.
Yeah.
So, if you want to experiment with that idea, right? And if you want to just give it a try and see if it's true, there's one thing for sure that's not going to benefit you, is to create thoughts that create a reality that you don't want,
Yeah.
right? So experiment, just really set your mind on the things that you want, and believe the things that serve you, that make you feel empowered, right? Believing that you will never have a job again, believing that you'll be stuck wiping butts all day long, that's not very empowering. Yet I have to admit, it felt very much like that. I felt like I will never, ever, ever wipe the last butt. Like, when am I gonna not have to buy diapers? Right? It just feels like it's gonna be the rest of your life,
Yeah.
very much so. And then baby number two came. I'm like, oh my God, I'm starting over again.
That's right.
It's more diapers. How many years? And then another potty training,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes, it feels very much like that. Now looking back, I'm like, that was so silly. There were certain
But in the
things that were
moment, when you're
easier.
caught in the moment,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to be wiping butts and vacuuming crumbs all day long and stepping on toys. That's the way it felt. Sometimes it still feels that way. I'm not wiping butts anymore, though.
Yeah. Uh, but it, what what I enjoy about it's at the top of our hour, but I was just going to sort of wrap up. Like, what I enjoy about our conversations is it didn't matter which topic that we have, it it always encompasses just about every aspect of everybody's life, right?
Yeah.
Because we're always transitioning. Whatever was going on, we're in a transition mode, right? We're always in a transition mode. We're evolving. You know, we we touched on labels, we touched on cultural, we touched on circumstances, we touched on being a victim to all that. Um, you know, yeah, no, it's been a really enriching conversation, and
And I guess that's the conclusion of it is you can sit in that and sit in like judging yourself and feeling bad about your transition and feeling lost and all that. And that is a spiral that's going to go on and on and on and on. It's easy to just sit in that, right? You
yeah,
just do, it's not easy. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's predictable what's going to
yeah,
happen if that is the way you're going to,
yeah,
your attitude is going to be. And there's a way to just kind of see it for what it is and live in the moment and let it run its course and take it as an opportunity to do the work of clarifying things for yourself and really look and review your values, your goals, your purpose, like just readjust. None of those things are set in stone. We are constantly changing,
yeah.
and so even what we want changes, right? What I thought I wanted, even I think I said this to you like a couple years ago when I did my life book, where I wrote all the goals that I had. Very much of it had to do, none of it had to do with coaching.
Mm-hmm.
All of it had to do with the business that I had at the time, my e-commerce, social activism, fashion. None of it had to do with this. Now, when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel that way about it anymore.
Yeah,
But I was
yeah,
super passionate about it then, right?
yeah.
So we are constantly changing and evolving. And so even what we want is not just set in stone. So we do have to do this work of reassessing and relooking at the goals that we have set and the things that we believed we wanted to accomplish, and just check in with ourselves. Is that still what I want?
Is that
Would
still
that
valid?
still fulfill me? Yeah, is that still
Absolutely.
valid? Is that still aligned with me? Right?
So,
Because if you're changing, right?
yeah. So are you saying we have permission to change our mind?
Of course. I mean, you're talking to a fashion designer turned into a coach.
Could you imagine if yeah, no, no. It's yeah, and thank goodness they got rid of bell bottoms, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway,
they always come back though.
I know they're coming back. I know they're coming back. But anyways, this has been a really fun conversation, and I like the way you kind of wrapped it up. I appreciate that, and so next week we'll have another one.
We'll have another one, and then we're going to have a guest coming up.
Yes,
Is it at the end of April?
it's towards the end of April. Yeah, yeah, yeah. His name's Dominic, and we haven't quite settled on a topic. He's kind of left it open for us, but I think a little bit of a continuation of this one might be like
Mm-hmm.
projection, creating the future and things like that. So he's a master coach out of the ICF, master trainer coach. I understand too, something. But
We're
anyways,
gonna wait. We're gonna wait for that this conversation then, because I'm super excited to discuss all of this.
yeah, yeah, no, awesome. Anyway, you have a wonderful week, everybody that's listening or
You
listening today
too.
or watching the recording. Please make sure share this, share our pages with your friends and family, and our YouTube channel. Make sure you like it, subscribe to it, all those different things that you have to do in a social media setting. And we really appreciate you spending time with us. And thank you, Fati.
Thank you, Rick. And if you have any good ideas for a name, send it our way. That's not taken.
Yeah, yeah. We're open to all sorts of suggestions, any including future topics too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
no holds back.
All right, everyone.
Bye bye,
Bye.
and we Hold.